Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Kel Revs, the chest of the best. The adventurer's best friend, where you can get everything you want for just your top half off. And tonight, we're talking shop. Episode 16 of the Magnus Protocol Antisocial. Now, this episode came at basically the right time because it sees the return of a character we hadn't seen in a good long while, Inksoul. Not only that, but now we have a face to the name, as the format of the episode is a series of videos. The episode itself is still an audio-only format, but the incident is evaluated as a video. The tensions have started to ease a little bit, and not by much. Now it feels we're being set up for the next steps, and even the endgame. But let's not waste time and start looking at all the pieces presented to us in this episode. Do bear in mind, I am kinda sort of coming down with something, so if I sound just the slightest bit off, that is the reason why. But without further ado, let's just jump into it. The episode takes place 2 days after the previous one. It starts with Alice shakily wrapping up her recollection of her experience, while Sam and Celia comfort her. She reveals that after fleeing, she returned to the woman as the paramedics arrived. The tape recorder was gone, the woman wasn't breathing, and the paramedics wasted no time in their evaluation. The woman was dead. And apparently must have been dead for a long time. Her lungs, it seems, were so waterlogged that Alice's story of the woman walking and talking came off as the hallucinations of a witness in shock. Sam and Celia reassure her that, considering what they evaluate on the daily, there's no reason for her to think that she's losing it. They decide to get back to work before they all fall behind their caseloads and get an earful from Lena. Thus, the incident begins. It's dictated by Chester/John, at least at first. The incident is a series of vlog posts to a site called vidclick.com by username Madam Electrum, hereon referred to as Madam E, starting October 30th, 2023. Chester only dictates her profile at the beginning, subsequent and relevant video titles, and their date of posting. The first video? Madam E/Inksoul. Tattoo reveal. Madam E energetically greets her audience with all the bravado and showmanship of your average influencer. She reveals that she is actually with Inksoul, getting a personalized tattoo. The design they've left entirely to Inksoul, who flatly describes it only as, quote, your heart's desire. Much like with Daria from episode 2, Inksoul is recorded as they tattoo Madam E, though the incident thankfully skips ahead of the likely painful process to Inksoul asking Madam E how she thinks of the result, described only as a heart tattoo. When Madam E breathlessly expresses her admiration, Inksoul orders her out. The video ends, and is followed by a second one, titled Recent Inksoul Rumors, posted December 19th, 2023, almost 2 months afterwards. In the time interval, something happened that Madam E had long been wondering about regarding Inksoul and has finally decided to come out and talk about it. Madam E apparently kept contact with Inksoul afterwards, having developed something of a crush on the mysterious tattooist. One day, they invited her to a particular plot of land out on Highgate Cemetery at 2:30 a.m. Madam E jumped at the invitation, snuck into the cemetery, and met up with Inksoul, who ordered her to dig up a grave with a spade they had brought with them. When she refuses, they threaten to, quote, break her heart. A threat that she feels so deeply it causes her to flee. The next day, news outlets report someone robbing the graves of Highgate Cemetery. She puts 2 and 2 together and calls out Inksoul in her video as potentially taking inspiration from the corpses they rob before ending the video. This is then followed by a third video posted the following day titled OMG, That Call Out Video. In it, Madam E is a mess. Gone is the bravado, replaced with hurting, crying, barely keeping it together, blubbering. While we don't get to see it, Inksol apparently dragged her on social media, brutally, from the sounds of it. Whatever they said, everyone who saw it took their side. Their followers and anyone else seems to have been very brutal in the resulting hate towards Madame E. She's been getting call-outs, death threats, doxxed, and even police have turned up at her residence with accusations that she was the one behind the grave robbing. No one seems to believe her about Inksol. And it's literally hurting her. Literally. She says she literally feels all the hate from the people who want her dead. That it's like bees stinging her all over her heart. And she reveals that the pain actually is leaving visible marks on her chest. She ends the video saying that she's going to take a break from social media. The fourth and final video is titled simply as Help, uploaded on January 3rd, 2024, but not posted publicly. Madame E is in the hospital. Something is wrong with her heart, and no one seems to know what. Her family thinks it's stress, the doctors think it's an infection from the tattoo, but she's convinced it's something else. She cries and pleads, saying that she just wanted to be noticed, that she doesn't deserve the views that are cutting her, the comments that hurt her. She struggles to breathe. Monitors and alarms go off in the background as she flatlines, and a wet, tearing sound is heard. And the incident ends. Having heard/watched the incident, Alice is overwhelmed. She doesn't freak out, but instead gets up, saying she needs to get a coffee. Sam and Celia follow after her to make sure she's okay, and while they're gone, Gwen arrives and starts with her own workload when a knock is heard and she leaves. We cut to the inside of Lena's office as she berates Gwen for stupidly allowing an external into the OIAR without taking any precautions. Gwen tries to defend herself, saying that the OIR seemed like a safer environment in contrast to wherever the externals call home field, and that Lady Mowbray seems far more tame when compared to the likes of Mr. Bonzo. Lena, however, doesn't relent, suggesting that Gwen's giving Lady Mowbray a tour of the facilities and introducing her to her work colleagues actually poses a significant security risk to the boundaries that the OIAR establishes with its externals. When Gwen calls Lena out for not telling her anything about what she's dealing with, Lena tries to respond that Gwen hasn't proven herself capable of thinking first, which Gwen calls out as hypocrisy, saying that the only other alternative is dying to whatever she has to deal with because she's traveling blind. When Gwen finally concedes, almost petulantly, Lena suggests that Gwen isn't a good fit as externals liaison, but Gwen cuts her off before she can finish, demanding a new assignment and proper training. Lena says she will consider it before dismissing her. And the episode ends. The case is filed as Cat 1RB1565-3010-2503-2024. Categorized under tattoo, subcategory influencer, and cross-linked with cardiac. So, let's start with the incident. Looking first at the victim of it all, Madame E, and what she experiences. As always, there's a blending of the archives' entities, the most prominent being an aspect of the eye. Madame E, as an influencer, is watched by many, apparently having as many as 137,000 followers on VidClick. Of course, this becomes proper fear when the anonymous hate comes in, the doxing, the arson, providing a theme of paranoia, characteristic of the eye, as well as the aspect of having knowledge that no one believes you about. There's also that possibility of secrets being leaked, which could be from Inksol's unseen call-out response. In any case, there's our eye connection, justifying Chester/John's voice for dictation, however brief it may be. Some possible other archives entities include the desolation in connection to the doxing, arson, and loss of livelihood from being so thoroughly cancelled by the court of public opinion, some smattering of the slaughter and the end from the senselessness of it all and the graveyard, though that is, admittedly, a bit of a stretch. There's also a presence of the corruption as well, less prominent than the eye and desolation, but more plausible than the end and slaughter. The heart issues being attributed possibly to the corruption or even infection from the tattoo, the bee stings within her heart with insects, of course, often being tied to the corruption as well. But I just want to say I really like the symbolism of it all. The bee stings, bees being one of many species who act as a hive mind, or in this instance more accurately swarm intelligence, connect seamlessly to the human hive mind, enacted through the algorithmic web that is the internet. In any case, it's not hard to infer what's happened here. The tattoo that Inksoul marked Madame E with obviously connected Madame E's heart and overall health to her online public image. Attacks became literal attacks upon her health, likely with some additional iconography feeding into the bee angle or how there's a wet sound as she passes in the final video, as if something burst out of her chest. Maybe Madame E likened herself to a queen bee, and that was incorporated into the tattoo. It could be anything, really. We never see the tattoo itself, and it's never described outside of being beautiful and depicting a heart. Or at least, it's implied to be depicting a heart. However, I want to take a second to latch onto some key phrases. Heart's desire in the video, and I just wanted to be noticed in the final video. Here, once again, we see a theme of obsession that I've been keeping track of. In this case, Madame E's obsession with being noticed and self-image. Well, perhaps it would be more fair to describe it simply as a deep-seated desire, but it's there. A want that borders on need at the expense of anything else. Madame E herself admits that she was worried that Inksoul would go public with something if she calls them out for grave robbing. We don't know what Inksoul revealed, and it's not like Madame E expected that the hate she got would literally be the end of her, but she was worried enough about it to hesitate going public. But she did it anyway. Why? Because in her mind, the clout was probably worth it. The relevancy was worth it. Maybe she was used to getting hate. Maybe she didn't believe in bad publicity. It doesn't matter how she justified it, because deep down, what matters most is that, deep down, she wanted to be noticed and seen. She just didn't know that she was playing a very dangerous game with a very dangerous player. Which leaves us with another victim of obsession and possibly another victim of low self-worth. Another theme we've been seeing in these incidents. But now, let's talk about the tattoos themselves. Inksoul. Finally given a voice in all this in the form of one Vera Chalk, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, who delivers Inksoul's lines in an aloof, distant, and flat performance, which, to be clear, I don't mean in a bad way. This marks their first true appearance in an incident having only been mentioned twice beforehand. The first, in episode 2, Making Adjustments, where they gave Daria, the artist, a paintbrush tattoo that allowed her to change her appearance via painting. And the second, in episode 11, Marked, where they revealed an obsession, interestingly enough, with their prolific British tattooist, the historical Sutherland MacDonald, and one Oscar Jarrett, before stealing the corpse of a sailor with a tattoo of a ship at sea being chased by something in the water. In universe, the sequence of events has Inksoul stealing the corpse in episode 11 in 2020, marking Daria in episode 2 in 2022, and brutally canceling Madame E in this episode in 2023. I had thought that perhaps they had been collecting corpses for study and had completed it by Daria's time, but apparently their grave robbing is a hobby they continue to pursue. That, of course, only leaves us with the same questions. What are they doing with the bodies? The easiest answer is studying them. Studying the tattoos that were left on their bodies in life, at least. But for what purpose? A connection to Sutherland MacDonald was established, which provides potential parallels to be drawn between him and, I guess, Robert Smirk or Jurgen Leitner. Did MacDonald try to pull a Smirk by studying and managing the entities via a chosen art medium? Where Smirk chose architecture, did MacDonald choose tattoos? And like Smirk, did MacDonald take on students who would, rather than follow his example, go on to become the most notable avatars of the very things he was trying to beat back? The only potential evidence of this is how the sea tattoo in episode 11 has a blend of all the classical archive spheres. Without more evidence of his early work, his students, like potentially Oscar Jarrett, or even Inksols, there's no way of finding that out. Looking directly at Inksol gives us an interesting set of character comparisons. Comparing them to Smirk only seems to outline the ability to invoke the entities via art, but that's all there is. There is, however, a firmer parallel to be drawn between Inksol and Jurgen Leitner, now that we have another instance of him digging up dead bodies. Leitner fancied himself as a keeper of the fears as well, managing them, in Lena's words, by collecting their artifacts and containing them. This all went to hell in a handbasket. But the lead up was there. The difference, however, is that Leitner was motivated in part by a grandiose delusion of protecting humanity from the entities, as well as him only really putting his mark on the things that he found. Inksol, it seems, is not motivated by a desire to protect. Our first experience with her work saw Daria use her newfound ability to shape herself into her ideal self, which she could never achieve. This could be excused as not necessarily being Inksol's doing, even if they are a catalyst for it. However, their words in this episode provide no room for doubt. Quote, "Don't make me break your heart." End quote. They knew exactly what their tattoo could do. They knew exactly what would happen if they turned hate towards Madame Electrum. And they didn't hesitate. The day or day after Madame E posted her call out, Inksol responded and viciously tore her apart. And the rest is history. Inksol is a vindictive individual displaying none of the virtues of Smirk or Leitner. This shifts the potential parallels to two other characters that better align with the way they carry themselves. One is Michaela Salesa. Formerly an assistant to Leitner before the fears wreaked havoc over his library, Salesa instead turned to collecting the artifacts of the fears and selling them to buyers, both knowledgeable and unsuspecting. For him, it was all about profits, as well as funding his search for something to keep him safe if one of the entity's rituals ever succeeded. One could make the rather grisly comparison of Inksol's collecting of corpses to Salesa's collection of curios and antiques. Perhaps their study of the corpses, the tattoos, could be how they improve themselves and therefore better advertise their tattoo skills to attract customers. Much like how Salesa's collection ultimately brought him buyers regardless of whether they trusted his character or not. One issue, however. Both times we've seen Inksol tattoo someone, they've done it for free. They're seemingly not in it for the money. That leads me to draw a comparison with the character I think fits their potential arc the most out of all of them. Mary Key. The mother of Jerry Key, and arguably one of the most despicable characters from archives, despite being a normal human and not an avatar. I'll give the Cliff Notes version, but Mary sought to create a dynasty of horror of sorts. She negotiated with agents of the powers, avatars, without giving in to any of them, hoping to create a name for herself as a keeper of the entities, but less like an academic or protector, and more like a, warlock. What she sought was power and knowledge, simply for the sake of itself. And that's why I think Inksoul and Mary make a better comparison out of all the others, though the motivations driving them are clearly different. I don't think Inksoul is in it for the money. I think they want a legacy. Something like Sutherland and MacDonald. Something like Sutherland MacDonald. I think they want to be remembered for their art and their vision and their work, and perhaps, in no small part, perhaps they're seeking to create art for the sake of art itself. Look at it this way. They create tattoos, growing their presence on social media so their work can be known all around. They do their work for free, but go solely off of their own intuition and artistic senses, as if the influence from their customers is irrelevant, short of some personal connection. I can't help but view them as an artist flanderized in their pursuit of a grand magnum opus. An artist bored with their own work, or the traditional medium, but has found the inspiration they've always wanted in the entities, the supernatural tattoos they make, and the victims of their art. It calls to mind psychopathic killers in fiction, who view their victims as the canvas to embody their artwork. Perhaps that's why they became excited when Daria told them she was an artist. Perhaps they thought they found a kindred spirit in Daria, or perhaps they were amused by the artistic irony of the artist becoming the canvas. At least that's where my speculation has led me. With only 2 instances of their work, there's plenty of room for the Inksoul's character to guide us in a completely different direction. The flat tones, which Verchok voices them, characterizes them as truly distant and removed individual, but is that the bored tone of an artist dissatisfied with our work? Or an avatar that simply doesn't feel like we do? The possibility of them being an avatar is also hard to ignore, given how they clearly didn't drown themselves in the sea after being exposed to the sailor's tattoo, but then, what could they be an avatar of? The corruption? Given how they've changed 2 victims' bodies? Maybe the eye, given how both victims keenly feel how they're perceived or viewed? A blend, most likely, but then again, of what? Or maybe it's something different. Something I completely forgot. Something in some sort of connection to Inksoul's snake tattoo. You know, it completely slipped my mind, but there was one other time when snakes factored into the narrative. And that was episode 14, Pet Projects, when snakes burst out of the reptile shop owner. At the time, I didn't think to consider a possible line of commonality between that incident and the floral serpent coiling around Inksoul's arm, which means... what? Is there something there? Some entity or theme that we're missing? Looking up serpent symbolism, the first thing I found was rebirth and reincarnation, demonstrated by the shedding of skin. And with the tattoos thing, the reptile owner being shed with all the snakes bursting from his body, and the way Inksoul's victims undergo a transformation of sorts, it's a start. But it's not enough. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm more unsure about stepping forward with this speculation regarding snakes and Magnus protocol when compared to my other hypotheses and theories, but I am inclined to wait for another snake-themed incident before diving diving deeper. But we'll leave that aside for the time being. Stepping back into the OIAR, I take back what I said about the entities and its avatars seeming to have a more cooperative relationship with the I-Vibe organizations. Lena's admonishments of Gwen suggest that tension between them and the others are most certainly still high, which in some ways is a relief, knowing that Lena, while foolishly trying to manage the bad guys, is not stupid. She knows they're dangerous, obviously, but also knows they can't be trusted to do what they, the OIAR, and perhaps the government want. But again, what does the OIAR want? To protect the world from the entities and their agents? Well, they've chosen a funny way of going about it. Whatever factions are active in the universe of protocol, they seem to respect the OIAR's boundaries. One just can't help but wonder why. It's not as if they don't have their pick of victims out in the world. Why cooperate? Is it a matter of self-preservation? If the government does know about them, does drip-feeding them entail not attacking them and allowing them to operate independently? Is it a better the evil you know kind of situation? We could list all the possible reasons why, but we're not going to get anywhere. I think for that, we'll need to wait for the next incident involving Lady Mowbray. If we can see the kind of victim she's been tasked with finding on behalf of the OIR, then maybe we'll see a connecting thread to Mr. Bonzo's target from episode 12. Though, I doubt it'll be blatant and obvious. Speaking of Lady Mowbray, I'm seeing the ways that she's dangerous beyond what she's capable of as a hunter. Lena asks Gwen if she's stupid for letting Lady Mowbray in and giving her the tour. And honestly, I think Gwen is. Now, I don't think her logic in universe is off per se. We as the audience know horror tropes and probably wouldn't trust any of the externals beyond their deep-seated impulses, but why would Gwen? A controlled environment makes sense. Leaves little room for surprise or ambush attacks. Arguably. Thing is, I'm leaning towards Gwen being more scared and not being inclined on her being smart here and thinking it through. She can dress it up as her thinking ahead and being smart, but that's not what I see and hear. In fact, the way she talked to Lady Mowbray at the end, perking up when she was asked about the Bouchard family, and the way she describes her experience with her to Lena, describing her as a lady, I see her as relaxing the moment she thinks that maybe she's in the clear with this external. Gwen, at this point, comes off as a petulant child. Lena's a boss, and not a leader, and a bad boss at that. So Gwen, being professional but abrasive, was understandable to a point. But the way she just goes, fine, no more externals in the office, happy, paints her as something of a brat. One that is also easily pleased when afforded even the lightest form of flattery. And I think Lady Mowbray is going to play off of that when it comes to Gwen. A conversation can be something of a hunt as well, with manipulations, nudging the negotiations, or lines of questioning in any given direction. As a member of highborn society, Lady Mowbray, well, it's hard to imagine she's not skilled at that. Assuming her compulsion abilities aren't supernatural in nature, I don't think Mowbray's ambitions will hinge on manipulating Gwen. But I can't help but feel like Gwen is susceptible to it. In fact, I'm starting to wonder if she's being manipulated by Lena. Sure, Lena was blackmailed by Gwen into getting a promotion, but despite that, Lena still has the upper hand. I'm no business negotiator, but Lena knows what Gwen wants. Everyone knows what Gwen wants. As long as Lena dangles that as something that she can have, Gwen will still jump for it. she'll still do her job, despite not knowing the dangers. It's only now that she really, truly knows what she's dealing with, that she's having second thoughts, even if she's not going to stop. Because ultimately, she's obsessed with getting what she wants. Meanwhile, we don't know what Lena wants. Presumably, she doesn't want Gwen's videos to go to her superiors, but she's not really giving up ground. She tests Gwen by having her go to externals without knowing anything. Gwen thinks maybe she's hoping the externals will kill her, but that doesn't sound right. With the exception of maybe Nikola Orsanov in Archives, avatars tend to honor deals even if begrudgingly, or to the letter rather than the spirit. I just don't see them crossing that boundary with the OAR, especially if there's some huge deal at play. And I don't think Lena would slip in an order for them to shoot the messenger, because there's something, that's something Gwen can check herself, which could spell trouble for Lena, either in the form of the blackmail or a change in target. And Lena said it herself. Even if she doesn't like Gwen's attitude, it takes time and resources to train up new hires. And perhaps she's weighing the possibility of Gwen's blind interactions, tipping a clue as to who her source is. If Lena truly values security and secrecy, then the fact that her failure was leaked to Gwen means that someone is monitoring her and gave her that information. Lena might just want to know why, and might be using this opportunity to see what happens if Gwen goes in blind. It's quite Elias Bouchard of her, ironically, making her more Elias than Gwen could possibly be, in a sense. However, Lena doesn't have Elias's gifts, and as a result, she didn't catch a blunder on Gwen's part. And now she has to weigh the risks a little more carefully and measure out her actions. I imagine that she will start educating Gwen on the workings of the world just on the edge of human awareness. But I also suspect that she will have to quietly fight to control Gwen's impressionable nature. Last but not least, let's discuss the drowned victim, who I guess we won't be seeing more as I initially hoped. Their lungs were filled with water, and the paramedics were convinced that she must have been dead for a while. Now, there have been plenty of instances of avatars literally being made of the things that they embody for the entities they're connected to. Statements from archives describes wax people, spider people, mud men, eye avatars with eyes growing on the inside of their bodies. The possibilities seemed endless. Here we have somebody embodying a fear of drowning. Again, a very specific fear that I noticed seems to draw on the vast, buried, and dark. And we know they were walking and talking. We heard them. Last time I suggested she might be an avatar or a victim of the post-change world pulled into this reality, but in both possibilities, she shouldn't be dead. Killing an avatar isn't easy, and it's not like being pushed off and onto the ground is going to do the job. If she were a victim, how has she been alive till now? And why would she only die now? It seems my wild speculation is, well, dead in the water. Go figure. However, this would mark the second time a corpse that should have been dead was still in arguably good condition. The first was in episode 11, Marked, the sailor's tattoo, which caused the medical examiner to ramble on about something in the water before dying in some tragic way involving the sea. The way the woman rambled about being claimed by the sea, could it have something to do with a tattoo? But without a description of how they looked, we have nowhere to go with that. Still, it's worth considering, especially since our previous hypothesis has even less of a thread to hang on to. However, speaking of threads, the tape recorder was gone. as if the tape recorder was meant to serve its purpose, and that having done so, it was whisked away. Bit of a change of pace, having a tape recorder disappear instead of appear out of nowhere, but the implication of the web remains the same. But why though? Why collect a victim's rambling, and why now? After all this time? Is it because something was recently released from captivity underneath the rotting remains of a suspicious academic institution? Guess we'll just have to wait and see. But that's where we'll have to leave it for tonight. This episode has brought more to the table without necessarily needing a new table. We found more evidence of obsession themes, victims of self-worth, more tattoos, more water, more snakes, and tape recorders. It's getting to the point that I really need to start keeping track of keywords myself. Maybe not unlike how the OIR categorizes everything. And with all the pet theories I'm putting out, I might just have to make separate videos for them, which I might just do after the season ends. Until then, let's just enjoy the little tidbits of mystery and horror that Rusty Quill so generously feeds us. From here on out, of course, we're going to have to pay attention to everything we have been paying attention to up to this point. Inksole, we can expect to make another appearance, though I imagine we won't be seeing them for a good long while again. And when they do, let's see what kind of victim that they prey on this time. Of course, I noticed that the victims tended to be those with maybe not body issues, but are under scrutiny or have perception issues or are connected to social media in some way. But that, of course, could simply just be the fact that you'd have to find Inksole via social media. But we'll be careful. There's also the matter of the groundsworks keeper dealing with Inksole after they took the body. So, odds are something happened to him, but I mean, we haven't heard from him at all. Odds are we may not. Or maybe he has become something else and become an avatar. Who knows? Either way, we know Inksole isn't a good person. We know Inksole is definitely not a good person either. But if they have if they for some reason decide to defend themselves against that statement, hey, I'm all for it. It means we get to see them again. But let's keep an eye out for that. Let's keep an eye out for snakes as well, because apparently there has to be something there. That's another theme that has randomly appeared that we need to just sort of like keep an eye out for. Same with the ocean as well. And let's keep an eye on Gwen, if only out of concern, because at this point it seems like she is playing with fire and she is going to get burned badly. But again, we'll just have to wait. Now, the next episode should drop in a couple of hours. I'm going to give that a listen. Unfortunately, I will not have an analysis. I will not have a Talking Shop episode for that next week, as I will be out on a professional seminar. However, I will go ahead and give it a listen, and during my downtime, I will analyze it. I will react to it. And I'll do the same thing that I did with, I believe it was episode 13 and 14, where I'll combine episode 17 and 18 in my next episode. So look forward to that. And hopefully by then I will be healthier and not so sniffly. But that's for me to worry about, for you to look forward to. If you have any analyses, theories, or if anything you would like to share, or call me out on something regarding my own analyses, by all means, you're more than welcome to do so in the Discord, or in the comments below if you are watching on YouTube. Anyways, with that being said, guys, thank you so much for popping in, hanging out, and being your beautiful selves. Shop's closed. Get out. Bye-bye.